If you value your freedom and freedom of speech, I strongly urge you to watch this video in full. Because tomorrow it might be something that you do or say that you're being targeted for, and you would hope that someone will speak out for you. Because there's quite a controversial story that's popped up over the weekend, and that is between Waitrose and Ben Woods, known online as Ben on Wine. No rhyme intended, I promise you. Now, as soon as I say it, you possibly know the account on X, and you possibly know that he posts fairly controversial things. And most of you probably won't be surprised that Waitrose has decided to suspend him over his posts because they object to these posts, and indeed it's part of a contract. Now, I have an admission of my own here, because I did make a post about this and later deleted it because I thought it was posted in haste and a little bit too one-sided, which is not really me, so I decided to delete it and do this video instead. I'm big enough to admit if I've done something either wrong or in haste, but not for the reason that lots of the trolls seem to think it was and that I've somehow misunderstood the law, because a contract cannot, as a matter of law, completely override one's freedom of expression, because it's a protected human right. But that's not to say that there aren't problems in this case, because I can see it from Waitrose's point of view as well. So I'll try to be balanced in this video, because if I were an employer, I might object to those posts myself. And so whether or not that overrides the human rights element would be for a tribunal to decide, if it ever gets that far. Now, Ben is being supported by Free Speech Union here, and he has a crowdfunder running. Hundreds of people have donated to support Ben in his fight for free speech here. I believe it was first covered, or one of the first coverings of this was by the Daily Mail, and then it's been covered by Spiked Online. So I'll link those below and give you an idea of some of the posts that they're complaining about. One of them was this Matt cartoon that Ben reposted that says, "Your son is falling behind in sex education. He could only name 47 of the 100 genders." Now, obviously, Ben has strong views about these things, strong conservative views in his own words, and he's posted a lot of conservative things. Another one he posted said, if a referendum was held tomorrow, would you vote to close the borders? Over 4,000 people voted and 98% said yes. He also criticised Angela Rayner's clothing. He also posted another one about that book that says, In My Daddy's Belly, the story of a transgender dad giving birth, which describes two dads eagerly awaiting the birth of their first child, and said that that was spreading misinformation. Now, you may hold views on that as well. So, aside from some of them that you might object to that he's posted, you may agree with some of those posts. So what if we were to split those out and you only posted the ones that you actually agree with, but you were disciplined and possibly suspended or sacked from your position for posting things that you agree with and you firmly believe in? Because you may not firmly believe in everything that Ben posts, but that's my point of this video. Where do we draw this line? Because I am stuck between a rock and a hard place, although I did make my post in haste because I felt that they were stamping on free speech in roughly the words that I used. But at the same time, I sort of retract a little and think, well, I can see it from Waitrose's point of view, because if I were the employer, I might be upset about someone posting things like that. Certainly about the things that come very close to what I would consider really critical of religious values. As an employer, I would object to my employees posting things like that. But for some of them, I might not. So ask yourself which posts you would agree with and which posts you wouldn't agree with. And if there are some posts that you would agree with posting, how would you feel if you were targeted, suspended and sacked and disciplined for posting those things that you genuinely believe in? Now, coming to the contract aspect, because it's been posted online somewhere that a snippet from the contract, I don't know if it's the same contract or what, but this is taken from a previous tribunal against John Lewis, which owns Waitrose, and it appears to be part of their social media policy, which I assume forms part of their contract. But as I say, as a matter of law, it cannot completely override your right to the freedom of expression, which is an Article 10 ECHR protected human right, which some people have pointed out as being ironic because Ben says we should get rid of ECHR. But that's not to say we should also get rid of the right to the freedom of expression. We have the freedom of expression anyway, regardless of ECHR. It just so happens that it is one of the articles that protects free speech. However, This social media policy here says any partner who identifies themselves as an employee of John Lewis Partnership, who is known to be a partner or is connected through a social networking site to other partners or other suppliers or customers, must ensure that all content posted is consistent with this policy, the acceptable use policy, and the internet security instructions. Partners must not post any information that could be considered bullying, harassing, discriminatory towards any individual or group of individuals. This includes derogatory or offensive comments relating to gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, age, marital status, or religious belief. But that is where we have to draw a bit of a line, because they cannot, as a matter of law, say that you must not post anything that is in any way offensive regarding something that you fundamentally believe in. If it is a fundamental belief that you hold, and you are manifesting your belief within the law, this cannot override that right to do so, unless it crosses a line to be grossly offensive. In this particular case that I was quoting it from here, I believe it was very clear that it was grossly offensive, what was posted, to the extent that I'm not going to repeat it here. And so in that case, clearly it was held to be a fair dismissal, as against an unfair dismissal. So the claim by that individual failed. But this policy and the contract, etc., cannot completely override the right to the freedom of expression. But this is a balancing act. And as I said, if it gets that far, it will be a tribunal to decide, going through each of the tweets complained of. If in the event that Ben was fired and brought a claim for unfair dismissal, it will be for a tribunal to decide whether that was unfair or not. And this is where we come to Ben's crowdfunding here, because fighting these things can be very expensive. Fees for lawyers and barristers can be very expensive, and taking this to court obviously takes a toll on an individual. And so hundreds of people have supported this so far, raising over £8,500. Ben had an initial target of £3,000 to go through his disciplinary proceedings, a stretch target currently set at £15,000, and so he hopes that will see him through this process to a conclusion. Moving back to the Free Speech Union, they told The Telegraph, "Our case and legal teams have been assisting Ben throughout this process. He's one of 260 ordinary people we're assisting right now who are being punished for their opinions. We've seen a spate of supermarket workers investigated and penalised for their lawful beliefs in recent months. Supermarkets have no business snooping on employees' lawful views." Now, some people have commented online that Ben did reference Waitrose within some of his posts, but that's not necessarily unlawful either, depending on what they say and how it was put across. But at the same time, even if he was expressing his views, that could still be within the bounds of the law, expressing his views lawfully. Now again, I can see it from both sides. I can see that the employer would be upset that one of their employees is posting things that appear to be derogatory and perhaps bring them into disrepute, but that doesn't necessarily cross the line of being unlawful. So you can see the balancing act here. One of the things that's brought this to the forefront is people supporting Reform UK. Free Speech Union says that their intervention follows a pattern of employees being investigated or dismissed for expressing mainstream political views, including supporting Reform UK. Now, I've personally seen lots of cases where people have been suspended or dismissed from their work because they've been supporting reform. Free Speech Union says they're also supporting Saba Prosidi, a father of two, who is suing one of Britain's largest housing associations for political discrimination after being sacked as a resident involvement officer. Hightown Housing Association justified his dismissal by claiming that Reform UK's policies on immigration, net zero and housing were in direct conflict with its own values. So, in essence, because an employee was supporting Reform and Reform's values were against their values, they justified his dismissal. So is that not an employer directly trying to push you to have certain political views and dismissing you if you support a party they don't like? This is the very problem here. So whether you like and agree with Ben's posts or not, and for the record, I don't agree with everything that Ben posts, but that's not the point. As a barrister, we don't necessarily agree with every client that we represent. For example, I don't do criminal work, but if a barrister were to object to what a client is accused of doing in the criminal courts and therefore refuse to defend them, we wouldn't really have a justice system. We need a justice system that will fearlessly and fairly fight for both sides here. We've had people accused of espousing their political views and being punished for it. So the bottom line here, as I say, is whether or not, if it gets that far, a tribunal decides that any of these cross the line. So once again, if you have a social media account and you post your views now again, it might just be a repost, not your own post. You might repost a cartoon which you agree with because you have strong views on that particular subject, and your employer finds it, then you might end up in the same position as Ben here. Whether you agree with everything he posts or not is somewhat irrelevant. Hence, me asking you to watch the full video at the outset. So if you value your freedom of speech, I strongly urge you to join Free Speech Union. They've not asked me to do this. They don't know I'm doing this, but I am a member myself. I would urge you to do the same. Because one day you might need the support of someone if you've expressed a view and your employer fires you for it. And especially with the political landscape being what it is right now, very polarizing views from very different parties. If you are seen to support one of those parties and your employer doesn't like it, then you may well be in trouble. So please take that to heart. Consider everything that I've put up here for you to read, do your own research, etc. My video is not the only source of information on this, but I felt this video was worth doing just to give a more balanced view than my original post on X. So hopefully you found that useful. Please do subscribe to the channel, support free speech, and as always, thank you for watching.